Hello, everyone. I had a crazy idea the other day, and that was because on the Looking for Group subreddit, I saw three different posts about trying to learn how to play Shadowrun on the front page in the same day, and I was like, three posts for Shadowrun and 25 posts? That's crazy. Let me do something about this. So I went over to Roll20 and I made a table where I then tried to set up a group so that I can help them learn and teach them how to play Shadowrun so that in a couple of weeks' time I can leave and they can keep going. And hopefully that's what's going to happen starting here tonight. Um, I have unfortunately only ever played with Patrick before, and unfortunately in the way that I haven't, played with everybody out there. But since I don't know you guys and you don't know me, if we could just do a quick like left to right um, introduction, maybe a little bit of your knowledge or experience with Shadowrun, maybe why you are interested in. I don't know. Make it entertaining. You guys have watched TV interviews before.
So we talking left to right in roll 20?
Yeah, I usually go by Roll20 because
All right, yeah,
that's
that works.
that's
Because
displayed for everybody.
okay, I guess that means me first then. It's just
No
Omega.
pressure.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Just Omega. The zero is the joke is it's silent, but it doesn't matter. I've I haven't played Shadowrun. Mostly, I got interested because of a Mirror Shades. You know, role play. It's me, JP, and a story time from 4chan, which is by 2D. It was a Shadowrun Fourth Edition story time, and it's fucking funny. Um, so I mean, I figured I'd give it a shot. I like trying new systems, and see where we go. That good enough? Or you want something else?
I'll go next, I guess. Um, I've been I haven't really played Shadowrun all that much lately, but I have a first edition hardcover on the shelf, so that kind of gives you an idea. I'm quite familiar with the back history of Shadowrun, so to speak. There's been some pretty long gaps in between. I'm an older gamer. I'm um, in my late 40s. Um, kind of done equal amounts of being storyteller and being a player over the years. I I like fifth edition by and large. I have not played the most in it, but I think it's a fine system to do things in. I'm not really sure about the editing and the way it's published, but that's a different story. You can make it work. May need some house rules here and there, but by and large, I'm the kind of guy that prefers to let a story flow. If the rules get in the way, I'll make up numbers and I'll try and do that in the background so it doesn't disturb things. I just don't like having to spend half an hour looking things up while we're doing things. So a storyteller that has the confidence to make things up on the flow, or me being the storyteller and the players having confidence in me, either way works. I don't like dwelling too much on the nitty gritty whether something is a +2 or a +3. That's just does nothing for the telling of the story. By that same regard, I really am not a fond of power gaming. I like strong archetypes. I like people who really dig into. I want to be an orc mage because that's the image that I have in mind. I want to be a voodoo mage because that's what I have in mind. I don't like people wanting to play, an elf shaman because that gives me charisma 9 with exceptional attribute. If you want to play a high charisma mage, that's fine, that's cool. But make it about the story, not about the numbers. That's kind of my input behind things. That also means I tend to give people room who have a suboptimal concept but trying to make it work. I guess that's kind of my input. I tend to be a low combat GM, and as a player, I tend to avoid combat. Combat is fun, but it's deadly, and being dead really does not contribute to the story much. And in Shadowrun, as Rob can definitely affirm, combat is very deadly. Usually it means that something went wrong. Other than that, I'm kind of here to see how it's going. If this becomes a group that I'm happy with, I'll happily be part of it. If not, I will happily, be here for a while, see whether I can help people along, and then go along my way alongside Rob. We'll just see how it goes.
It's a wild and crazy ride. We're gonna see where this takes all of us.
All right, so I am Neocrates. I am an old hand at Shadowrun, playing since its inception. Um, my last time playing, though, was about a year ago. I was active on Runner Hub, but I started traveling a lot for work. And then I changed jobs in February and moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, which kind of put me out of sync with everybody that I've been playing with for the last few years. So it's been about a year since I've been a player. I've been running a Shadowrun campaign out here. Had some friends from back in the old days, which has been fun. But I've been kind of itching to play. So when I saw this pop up in the Roll20, I was like, hell yeah! I don't know. I guess in general playstyle, I prefer black trench coat to pink mohawk. I like to think about things creatively and find um, more interesting solutions. But it's for me the big thing, the most fun about Shadowrun is the problem solving aspects. That's it, I guess.
Awesome.
All right, my turn, I guess.
Yep.
So originally, I played the computer game first, the Shadowrun Returns and Dragonfall. And one of my friends, like 2 summers ago, they're like, "Hey, you want to start a Shadowrun game?" I'm like, "Well, you mean the computer game?" And they're like, "No, a tabletop game." And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I've played the computer game. It should be fine, right?" So then they send me a file of the PDF. I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is different." So, and they're like, "You wanted to DM?" I'm like, "Maybe, sure, I'll give it a shot." But like most groups that are being created these days, it like fell through like 1 or 2 games in. And since then, really, I got into one other group, but it's been playing on and off lately. So I found you guys, and I'm like, yay, I get to play a game. And here I am.
So I guess I'm up.
Yep.
All right. I've played a couple of mostly Pathfinder games in the past, but I saw some people playing Shadowrun before, and I played the computer game, so I always wanted to give it a shot. And I kind of just love the whole planning out the bank heist, the million different ways we're going to do it, and trying to figure out the best way and who's going to do what. And I just love all that planning element behind it. So really interested in trying to figure out how we're going to do it, and that whole teamwork of getting the bank heist done.
Awesome. Forget everything you know about Pathfinder. You're off the edge of that map. It's not going to help you. And I guess finally is me. I am Bamce or Rob, and those of you who have been to my YouTube channel before, I play a lot of Shadowrun, or not so much recently, but in the past I have. I was active in the founding of the Runner Hub. I played in the very first game as the part of the 36-hour Shadowrun extravaganza that predated the hub, and then I have been involved in some of the upper uh, tiers of running it for the past 2 years. Recently, new job, less time to commit, so haven't been as active. However, I did spend a little bit of time putting out some GM advice videos and that kind of stuff to try and spread my love of the system in the setting, regardless of how much people may see or hear me complain about various aspects. Um, we'll get into those maybe eventually, probably not. Um, but as I was saying at the top, when I saw this post, I'm like, you know what? I, for a while, was doing games for GMs where I would grab a bunch of GMs, we would play a singular game, and we would swap notes on the game that was played because so often it's one of those things that, hey, this happened in my game, I need advice. And then that person would get advice, and then but there was this other part that was contributing to that situation. It's like, oh well, I didn't know that, and then the advice changes, and the only real solution to that I saw was to just get these GMs together and play together. So now we could all have input on the same exact situation and know the same exact thing. Now I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to grab a bunch of players and I'm going to teach them. I say that with very loose air quotes because I run a very rules light Shadowrun game. I, like Pat was saying, I don't like to dig up rules for things. I can only really promise that the world will act realistically and consistently to whatever it is that you're doing. The biggest nemesis in Shadowrun is the fact that the world is against you. You are a criminal at best and a terrorist and worse at times. So, for example, to bring up Pathfinder, when you're a full plate wearing fighter that's walking around with his greatsword, nobody bats an eye at you in town. In Shadowrun, when you're a troll with a claymore and full body armor trying to get a soy dog, you've had the cops called on you like 4 times because that's what would happen in a world like today. Take it a little bit farther into 70 years in the future, throw in a little bit of the good old-fashioned racism against the new races that exist, and the ridiculous escalation in security. So nowadays you have people calling the cops over an unattended backpack. Imagine a dude that's 10 foot tall and, can probably rip your arm off. They're going to call cops a lot easier on him. However, Shadowrun is also great in that there is a lot of crunch to it, which you can take or and leave as much of that as you like. The character creation system is different in a way that it allows you to really showcase who the character is. I could show you guys some character sheets, and I will probably off camera, where the hope is that when you look at that character, you can immediately get, not that character, I'm sorry, that sheet for the character, you can immediately get a feel for who that character is without 3 paragraphs of backstory. Something like D&D or Pathfinder, you have 6 attributes that'll differentiate you from the other level 1 fighter. You may have a couple of different proficiencies and maybe a different background tagged on there, but more or less you're going to be the same. Shadowrun doesn't operate that way. There's a lot of little intricacies between, especially the context and the knowledge skills, that'll allow you to really kind of showcase who your character is and what they do. The other thing I really like about it is you can do a lot of different settings. You could do, a gangland street game where you're real nitty-gritty gutter punk kind of stuff. You can do your standard Shadowrun where you're doing runs against the corporations and sticking it to the man and doing all that kind of stuff. You could do some other side of the coin where you're playing as the cops hunting down criminals. Or you can get really crazy and you could play something like Cyber Pirates. Or you could be a band that runs the shadows, not necessarily to perform crime, but if I can sneak into that record production facility and I can get my mixtape on their host and then just have it produced, like real guerrilla radio style, that is also a game that you can run using Shadowrun. And on top of the lore and the setting and all that other stuff, which the computer games did a pretty good job of showcasing, I feel, has brought a bunch of new people in, and that's actually what brought me in. So, yeah. But before we get into anything, I guess, productive, does anybody have questions?
Actually, something between a question and a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be cool if everyone gave, 1 or 2, maybe 3, like TV shows and movies that they see as a kind of inspiration between the kind of stuff that they want to see in Shadowrun? I don't mind starting out.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay, so my suggestions for some inspiration would be the show Leverage and Blade Runner.
Those are pretty good.
Just for starters.
Ocean's 11 and Johnny Mnemonic.
Those are also really good.
11, yeah.
I'll go a little older. I like the A-Team.
I can see that.
You should have gone with MacGyver if you go that route.
He was on my second list. I actually have a list of IMDb TV episodes, like their listings, and it's A-Team, MacGyver, X-Files, Leverage is on there, and a couple of other things, and it's all very potentially Shadowrunny. Continue.
Let's see, what's the movie I'm thinking of? The Heat. I know it's a bank
That's
robber
a
movie.
yep,
Payday got based
Yeah.
off of it. Yeah.
yep. That's a good one.
Horrible ending though, but other than that, it was a really good movie.
I was gonna say Ocean's 11 as well. You could probably make a case for something a little more recent, like John Wick. Probably make a case for that.
John Wick is totally a prime runner that has retired, and then somebody screwed up.
Killed his
Like-
dog. Shouldn't have killed his dog.
Yeah, like that movie was so good.
So there's one aspect that all of us so far have not mentioned because it's really rare in TV shows: the magic element.
It's
There
true.
is there is a really, I mean, what are you gonna do? You know, I guess modern fantasy is definitely a thing, but the cross between modern fantasy and high tech is just so rare. I mean, I love the magic element in it. I mean, as Bamce can reaffirm, I like playing magic type characters, even if they're not necessarily magical. Heck, on the hub for a while, I played a Sasquatch. You know, it's very obvious, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's there's not a whole lot of TV shows with that, but I do like that. That's
Not in
the
a,
mystical element.
Not in a modern day kind of way, unfortunately.
Well, there are a few. God, what is that TV show? Based on a book series about a modern mage.
Dresden Files.
Yeah, Dresden Files. That
Yeah.
would
That's a
actually
very
make
good
half
book
decent
series.
Shadowrun.
That's a very
Yeah, it
good book
would.
series. I recommend it wholeheartedly.
You know, I really want to
Putting
check
that
it
on my
out
list.
because there's actually a Dresden's File RPG setting for the
Yeah,
Fate system,
Fate.
and it's definitely one of the things that's on my like when I'm on Roll20 looking for a table. It's definitely on my list of things I check.
I've never seen it. Just like old posts maybe, but not like an
Yeah.
active one. It's real sad.
Nah, Fate is already a more niche game, and then you want to throw a specific setting on top of that. Either that, or it's just not a big following on Roll20. I'm not sure.
Too.
But that does bring us to, I guess, our first bit of actual conversation is, what kind of game do you guys want to play?
Well, and let's see. It looks like Tushar might be hopping in soon.
Uh-oh. We have to put him
He's
through
typing in chat.
all
It's
his
like,
paces.
yeah. I just don't want to start with that. Or like, he's about
Do
to
any
join.
of
We
the
don't.
actual discussion without him?
Yeah. No, back to the whole magic thing. Like, I can't think of anything that would like be equivalent to like a technomancer. Like nothing in media lately I've seen like that.
I can only think back to Babylon 5 with their techno mage.
Oh, that's an old
I
one.
love Babylon 5, yeah.
Can he join the call? He's in Roll20.
Let me try adding people to this call.
Yeah.
When you said Babylon 5, though, I was reminded of Stargate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Stargate.
I guess so. It would definitely be a very different kind of Shadowrun, but it could work.
I mean, if you replace the air quotes aliens with the different metatypes, there you go.
Yeah, and you probably don't want to go actually off Earth, but other than that, it would work.
And
Yeah.
like every episode, they got a mission. That could be a run.
Tushar, hello.
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Terribly sorry about the starting time kind of thing. I blame the fact that I had to be up really early to work today and not and being up really late last night and getting the times wrong. But that's okay.
Well, I think I'm partially to blame as well because I get confused with time zones all the time.
No, you're fine, dude. I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't.
They're
nothing
basically
real's been talked
witchcraft.
about. It's a horrible,
Um,
horrible thing.
So the unfortunate side is you missed everybody introducing themselves and talking about their expectations or their experience with Shadowrun. The good news is it's going to be recorded and you can check the first 20 minutes of the YouTube thing.
Awesome.
But let's hear a little about you. Like, what is your experience with Shadowrun? What has gotten you interested in it? And anything else you really feel like sharing?
Oh, my first experience was probably the video games made by the studios, whatever the two games. I really enjoyed them. So after that, I decided to like. I realized that there's actually like a D&D setting for it, and that's how it started. Try to get into a game. I think I got into like two, but like for some reason the other they didn't really last very long. So I got like a couple of sessions in, but not that much. So I have a little bit of experience, but not that much. And
Where
sorry,
to device, don't call it a D&D game, please.
I
yeah,
tell
yeah,
you,
yeah.
you're lucky I
No,
was muted. I'd have been like, it's not a big deal. It's just one.
D&D is just one type of role-playing game. There's tons
yeah,
of them.
No, it's just it's, to use a 2016 Tumblrism. It's just one of my triggers. Um, so we were just talking a little bit about the different types of Shadowrun games, how it can be anything from like gangland, gutter punk type stuff to like corporate espionage to even something like the old school A team or being a band that is trying to do guerrilla style marketing and that kind of stuff. And then we were getting into what kind of game do you guys want to play? Because Shadowrun can fit a lot of different types of games before we even break it down into the whole pink mohawk, black trench coat setting, because that's a filter. You can apply that to any of those aspects. Um, so
By and large, I uh, I enjoy not so much having influence over like things like the politics of the world, but interacting with it. I don't mind being a henchman, as long as I get to interact with the stuff going on in the background, even if I don't have direct impact on it. You know, even if I can't influence it, I just like to see little cogwheels going on.
Mm, me personally, I don't got a specific kind of thing I want to do, but yeah, I really do like stuff with character interaction, and maybe something to do with, I don't know, either I would say backstory, but you know where they're coming from. It's like, oh, say
Yeah.
guys like a you know corpse center. 20, you know,
that'll
that's a big thing,
So would you
and
then
that
like
that would be
would
something
you
to
then
go off
like
of.
everyone having like a similar background? You know, everyone being a rock band, of everyone being a tribal native, or something similar to that, or everyone being in a biker gang.
But I'm super open to whatever. I just want to have a good story, you know. Anybody else got anything?
I like to
I
break
mean,
into things. You know,
Yeah, I think
not necessarily a bank heist, but you know, just sneak in there, try to get it off, Ocean's 11 style. You know,
yeah, I think typical Shadowrunner mercenary for hire with different backgrounds put together by somebody would be the easy to give us the most flexibility
I'm
and
down
give
with
us
that.
good bad guys to fight corporations and individuals in crime and whatnot.
I think you mean good guys to fight.
Yes.
Remember, they're
Yeah,
gonna
we're
I
the
mean
bad
that
guys
depends
here.
on which side you are.
Yeah, relative bad guys relative to us.
okay. Um, so more along the lines of just like the standard Shadowrunner experience.
Yeah, that's what it's seeming like.
Sure.
I
I'll
mean, unless somebody had some kind of like stellar thing. The band thing sounded interesting, but guerrilla marketing doesn't. I mean, like I don't know how much flexibility we would have in the story.
And yeah,
Being
that
okay.
the other thing about like a you know base Shadowrun thing, it can break out into something else.
could very much could. Um, so that leads us on to a couple of different filters we can apply to this. Um, do you guys like the more black trench coat, planning everything out to the last detail, or do you guys like the let's compare Ocean's 11 and say Smoking Aces?
um, I'd probably be more black trench coat. If I want to, you know, just pink mohawk stuff, and it's, I mean, it could be fun, but I mean, if you just doing that wouldn't be fun.
It's definitely one of those switches that can be flipped depending upon the run.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that would be like what I'll be into. Be like something in the middle where depending on the situation or depending on the run, like we can either
Plan-
go like
yeah. Plan B
So
kind of thing.
I believe the long-standing term is mirror shades for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mirror shades.
Okay. Another important question. Have you all worked together before?
Mm,
Are
well,
we
that
are we an established team, or is this the first time somebody is pulling you together?
that was I got a question about it. So, are we already going to be runners? Maybe we have a few missions under our belt, or we just happen to all come together for a low level run. It's like, hey, sounds good to me.
See, this kind of ties into how we want to do character generation. I know that's very mechanic oriented, but it's sadly a very practical thing to look at. The default rules have you start out as quite the experienced runner. We basically need to house rule things to change that. I have no issues with that, but it's just something to keep in mind.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but
I'm all for us having already been working together, because having believable trust bonds that are implied because of history smooths everything else out. Otherwise, everybody's got to be, oh, I can't trust the guy next to me, and I don't know you, and that seems to create friction sometimes.
I'm okay with this.
Good call. So, what about playstyle? I'll directly admit that although it's not necessarily a trigger, I just don't like games that are too blatant in your face. I'm not a Pink Mohawk player. Now, mind you, I do believe in Black Mohawk. That is, precise strikes. I don't mind big explosions as long as they're tactical, as long as they serve a purpose. Heck, I don't even mind making jokes about it, but I'm the guy that makes the jokes about it over their transceiver instead of over a bullhorn.
Um, I'm totally down with like black trench coat, but again, if something's going shit, like someone's infiltrating, we got like a decker outside trying to get them through, and shit goes down. I mean, I'm expecting the Sammy to bust in at that point, and start trying to get him out.
Problem with that in Shadowrun, once stuff goes down, you usually need to abandon, otherwise the whole team is dead.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
And
are
I'm
you expecting
perfectly
to leave
fine
the
with
infiltrator?
abandoning people, because otherwise you really are no longer playing Shadowrun. You know,
Well, it depends on the characters, right? Like, I mean, if your friend's going down, it depends on what would you do. And sometimes that's a more interesting situation where, believably, a couple people are like, "Screw you, I'm out of here," and somebody's like, "No, I'm going back to get them." But then you end up having, once everybody gets back together again, might have beefs. But that could be cool, interesting character development in and of itself.
I agree with the character development, but the other side of the story is not what would we do, but how are we reacted against. Once stuff goes wrong, you usually leave so much evidence behind that they can and will find you. And once they can and will find you, if you don't immediately try and cover your tracks and go into hiding, you're dead.
No, yeah,
Or worse, captured.
but at the same time, if my roommate's like dead on the ground bleeding or almost dead, and I can help him, I'm gonna help him out because he's my roommate and we've been through a lot.
Then you're both dead.
Well, I mean, that's what I'd take from my roommate. It's like I can save him. I probably can't save him, but in my head, I'd be like, yeah, I can save him. I'm cool. I'm awesome.
I will say, since this is a lot of people's first real time with Shadowrun, the assumed competence bar is going to be set pretty high. Just to quickly break that down, you guys, to my knowledge, and please don't tell me if I'm wrong, are not professional criminals. So your characters are professional criminals. So a lot of things that, because you don't have the player experience, is that your character would have normally done. That's where the specifically assumed competence comes in, because your guy's not going to walk down the street with a pistol in his crotch, just like, "What up? Look at me," because that's not a good way to go unnoticed. Now, if you were specifically trying to do it to intimidate a guy or to set a scene, and it makes more sense, but then you have specifically said that you're going to do that kind of thing. There was a run I did on the hub once where it was one of the guy's first things, and he was playing a troll with a katana, and he's like, "All right, I grab my gun, I grab my katana, and I jump on my bike, and I go down to the meet." And I'm like, "You do know that the meet is in downtown, right?" And driving around downtown with a 4-foot long piece of bladed steel that is a lethal weapon, might not be a good idea. He was like, yeah, you're probably right.
All those people with their armored vehicles with gun ports. Oh god.
Exactly. So some of that kind of stuff will be there to keep you from like walking into things you didn't really realize, because otherwise, you guys will go on 2 runs and I'll have HCR dropping on you and that'll be the end of it. You guys be like, man, Shadowrun sucks. And that's not what I'm here to do.
Common sense is probably the best quality for a person relatively new to Shadowrun. It's cheap and it will save your behind.
It's a good quality for anybody, actually. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Spider Sense. But that
Can
will
I take
that will
that
handle
and
tomorrow.
Thrill Seeker?
So we've settled on kind of like a standard Shadowrun experience with an established team that's done a couple of runs together, and I'll have questions for you guys based upon those previous runs. Probably tomorrow, maybe tonight. We'll see how that goes. Um, is there anything you guys want to talk about before we get into roles and archetypes?
Well,
Not that I-
it sounded like, or what I heard from just about everybody was that that we are a planning lot. It was expressed in many different ways, but it seems like tactical planning professional are words that would be assigned to our group tags.
It's called being alive.
Well, you could be successful. You could be successful at smash and grab if you're optimized for it, but it doesn't sound like that's the kind of thing that we're going for. You know, if our inspirations are things like Ocean's 11.
Actually, smash and grab works for certain game types. You know, if you're playing a biker gang, it can really, really work out.
It also depends upon what you're smashing and grabbing.
True. Yeah.
There was
If you
a,
don't do it against that technology.
Blood magic finds a way. There was a post I saw on the Shadowrun subreddit recently where one of the GMs was talking about players not getting consequences. The run was to steal a high-priced item from an artifact, and one of the players got sticky fingers and grabbed something else as well. And then got kind of upset when the person who was going to buy that item from the auction sent a bunch of goons after him to get the item back because they wanted the item. And it's like, this is what you guys were hired to do? Like, you went to get a different item, you stole somebody else's item. They're going to want that. Like, there's the consequences that come through you. But if you're like, say, just doing a run and you have a fetish for collecting lighters and you swipe a lighter off some dude's desk, nobody's going to care about that. Unless, it was a magical folk guy and they're going to use the ritual part to track it back down and find you.
That's unlucky.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I could totally see somebody using a lighter as a combat spellcasting foci to cast fireballs.
Or you could just have bad luck and swipe someone's lighter that was, a wedding gift or something.
Also true. Sympathetic links are definitely a thing. Which I guess is actually a very important thing for me to bring up, since we're kind of on the topic of looting. I have an adage. In D&D and Pathfinder, you're going to go into a dungeon and you're going to kill a bunch of goblins and you're going to run their pockets. Because in D&D, goblins do not call ogres. In Shadowrun, when you go into a corporate building to do your quest and you knock out a bunch of corporate security, your goblins, stopping to run their pockets means that the high threat response team has probably been alerted and is on the way. And those are the ogres. And when they show up, it's like a GTA stars and they just keep going up. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And while mechanically you may have more dice and stuff in various skills than a squad of like 6 high threat response dudes do, you don't have the gear. You don't have the ability to call Knight Errant and say, I need roadblocks here, 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 and here, and they're going to do it. And you don't have the ability to do simple things like shut down grid guide so that all of the cars in the area stop moving. When HDR... Go ahead.
Do you remember that run on the hub where people started with blowing up the monorail and, it went downhill from there?
There have been a couple of things. times on the hub where it was just like, "Are you guys sure you want to go through with this?" All right. And then that usually ended with like 3 of 5 runners being retired because HDR is very much like the agents of the Matrix. You do not fight them. You run, you hide. Don't try to fight them.
It's always fun when the GM says, "Are you sure you want to do this?"
You're going to hear that a lot
And
because I'm not going to stop you.
And at that point, you'll also see where loyalty comes in. At the end of the day, I'm going to play a character in Shadowrun that is loyal to survival. Which means that I'm going to help people survive, but if they insist on being dead, that is their own choice, and I will save myself. But that is my last ditch. I will do my best to help the team succeed and have to help the team survive. But if people, in answer to the GM saying, "Are you sure you want to do?" If everyone but me says yes and I say no, well, guess what? But that's not my first choice. I'm loyal first, survival second.
You will
But survival is still on the list.
you will also hear the phrase, "Are you happy with that level of success?" a whole bunch. Because I will open roll all of my dice, and you guys will see them all in front of you. But because of that, in certain situations, I will pause to make sure, and that's usually what I will ask. Because if you're going to edge the roll, I don't want to throw my dice and find out I roll crappy and say, "Oh, no, never mind, I don't need to edge that." Because it's very mechanics and not like you threw 15 dice to hack that thing and you got 3 hits. You know that if hacking goes wrong, bad things can happen. So before I roll, are you sure you don't want to edge that? And then we'll see where that goes. So just throwing that out there as an expectation.
That reminds me, by the way, that's one of the few places in Shadowrun where I'm actually unhappy with the game balance.
The
Hacking
edge?
requires no hacking.
Uh,
It requires a higher degree of optimization just to do your job than the other roles. You could take a mage 20% down in efficiency, it'd still be an efficient mage. A hacker, if you take him 20% down, he does nothing and is dead. And
yeah, he
I
definitely
don't like
suffers.
that. I don't like it. I wish that the difficulties for hacking were not quite so critical.
Yeah. We'll see where that goes. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about before we get on to roles and archetypes?
I was wondering when we're going to go into the setting, like where it's going to happen, or is that just we're going to talk about that later?
So I am terrible when it comes to lore and stuff, so I'm not super familiar with places outside of Seattle. That being said, we could totally fake it wherever you guys want to go.
Given that you know Seattle best, how about we do the first month or two where you're running the show in Seattle, and then when someone wants to take over, he can move the team to wherever that person feels most comfortable.
That's entirely possible.
That also means that that person then has some time to do prep work for whatever he has in mind for later.
There is also on the Shadowrun subreddit a fairly regular weekly World Builder Wednesday that goes up where somebody will put up a location and then we will basically all, as a kind of a group, begin to world build around it. I believe this last week was the Florida Everglades. So, did you guys have someplace else you wanted to go other than Seattle, or?
No, not really.
I'm fine with
Okay.
Seattle.
I'm from Seattle.
Seattle is fine as an introduction. I think that sticking with one of the classics as the intro, as long as there's still some new people, is good. So I would say Seattle or Hong Kong as introduction.
Sure. That works for me because I don't have to do any extra work. All right. Anything else?
Don't think so right now.
For the new people, when it comes to setting, how much do you guys know? I mean, do we need to give a very brief history lesson or not? Because the computer games really don't go into it very much.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't be opposed to like a brief history lesson.
Good news. I have homework for you then.
Awesome.
Yay.
One of the links in the giant pile of links I have on the Roll20 table is Opti's Neo-Anarchist podcast, which is a in-character and admittedly slightly biased world historical report, like from what is it, like 2008 or so?
Yeah, he
ki-
starts pretty early.
yeah, he starts pretty early to get into the lead into extraterritoriality stuff, and he covers almost all of the major events from then to now, um, and a bunch of other information about different things. They're usually maybe like 10-minute podcast episodes, so that's real easy to just blow through them. Um, and he does an awesome job, and I'll give him big hearts right now.
Yeah. If you don't look at stuff like mythical prehistory and things like that, the world of Shadowrun essentially is the same as our own world, but it starts to diverge somewhere in the late 1980s. If you look at, NPCs that occur, etc., before somewhere in the 1980s, they're all historical. They're actually people that exist. In the late 1980s, they start to change very subtle things in the backstory.
The the big thing they kind of grab onto and hold onto is the Mayan calendar, with how it said like 2012 was the end of the world, or that's at least what we assumed. It turns out that was truth, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of the fifth world, and thus ushered in the sixth world, which is where magic came back and all kinds of craziness began to happen. Um, but yeah, no, check out Opti. He's awesome. Check out the Arcology podcast as well. It's also in that pile of links. Um, Mr. Johnson and Vox are also great, and there's a whole bunch of other cool stuff in there to check out.
Those numbers, by the way, before the fifth world was the fourth world, obviously, which is, the prior time there was magic. There's basically, it's magic is there on and off. It kind of goes in waves. In the fourth world, you have things like Atlantis and the continent of Mu, and all these, mythical things like, Hyperborea, Thule, all these mythical continents in an age of, Neanderthal man and, um, fantasy heroics. That's where the dragons originally also came from. Admittedly, I don't actually know the history before the fourth world, because there is actually a game system that is about that, but the current publishers of Shadowrun don't have the rights to that, so they can't actually refer to that anymore.
Um, an important thing on that note is we here in the sixth world, we have not yet hit the apex of magic returning. We are still climbing up that hill, and certain things like Halley's Comet, when that came by, caused a big stir because there was a sudden surge in the Gaiosphere or the Manosphere of the Earth, which more people awakened. Things like changelings and shapeshifters and that kind of stuff started showing up a little bit more. Um, so we are still building up to optimum magicness, but that's very much outside the scope of uh, us, just because that's seventh edition and stuff, kind of thing. Um,
Kind of seeks decent into the next topic, though. From my experience in 5th edition, a dedicated magician, especially a summoner, can kind of dominate the group, because eventually they get badass enough that they can just summon a spirit to do the job of half the team. And it's really, really boring to be part of that half of the team that gets to sit back in the car and twiddle their thumbs while the magician does everything. So, whomever decide to play a magician, or even if it's multiple people, please don't optimize for summoning. It makes the game really, a sad affair.
I mean, that's mostly true. An important caveat on that is to remember that the spirits you summon are NPCs, and thus ultimately fall within the realm of the GM's control. So, something to consider when you try summoning a creature vastly more powerful than you and telling it to do your laundry. Just food for thought.
Wait, I can summon them to do my laundry?
You can, but if you summon, say, a water spirit to do your laundry, well, we'll see what happens when they're done, and how nicely you placate it.
Because once they're done, they're no longer bound to you. And if they then decide to stick around to, make a swimming pool out of your apartment, well, they can.
Yeah, they could actually. It's like, oh, you want me to do your laundry? Okay, I flood the entire building.
Fire Spirit, can you please do my laundry?
You ever see?
That
There's
can't go
this
wrong.
movie called "Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead," and the only part from that movie that I remember is these two guys sitting on the roof after being told to do the dishes, and they begin to take a shotgun and throw the dishes into the air and shoot them, and then the guy going, "The dishes are done, man." So,
They aren't dirty anymore.
so when that fire spirit is told to do your laundry and he incinerates all your clothes, laundry's done,
Dirty.
man.
Having said that, both as a player and as a GM, I like just the magical characters because they interact with the world on a whole different level. For the same reason that I like political characters and characters that are involved with, any kind of scene. People who are invested in the world is what drives me. People who don't care, who just care to collect their paycheck, that's boring. There needs to be something that grips you.
Right. That actually brings up an important thing to talk about is Shadowrun is like an onion. It'll make you cry. And it also has layers. The three primary layers are the meat world, which everyone has to interact with because that is the air we breathe, the food we eat, the ground underneath our feet. There is the astral, which is the domain of magicians, spirits, adepts, and those kind of things. Everything there is kind of a muted gray if it's not alive. And the rules get really, not like the game rules, but like the rules of interaction change a lot there. When you're astrally projecting, you're outside of your body. You're a ghost. You can go through walls. You can do a bunch of different things, but you can't really interact with anything because you're a ghost. You can't even, like, if you were to manifest, big difference. You wouldn't even be able to read a computer screen because it is just a gray blob to you because it's not alive. And then there is the technological side, the Matrix. This is our Technomancer and our Decker's playground. Many other characters are going to have some interaction because everybody's going to have a comm link. That's one of the great things that I also love about Shadowrun is if you have somebody who wants to get into your team or your table, you don't have to have all right, well, we're in the middle of a dungeon. Let's have you tied up and arrested and, goblins are going to eat you, whatever. No. Your boss, your fixer, is like, yo, I got this new talent on the line. He's going to go with you on your next job because I have a cell phone and I can call you. It also really helps with the metagaming things where you, in less technologically advanced games, you have to worry about, it's like, oh, well, I'm in the next room. I don't know what's going on in there. Sorry, I can't help you, but you should do this. In Shadowrun, you communicate through text messages you send with your brain. So you don't even have to, like, pull out your phone anymore. So everybody can really just share everything. If you have cyber eyes or even just some other vision gear, they can literally see what you're seeing. So it kind of gets more on the cooperative side than the guy that's like, sorry, I'm not there. I love to help you, but too bad. It is also where you are recorded because there's going to be cameras most places. It's where people are going to, because like, you see nowadays, when there's a car accident, a bunch of assholes pull out their cell phones and start uploading it to their Facebooks. Same thing's going to happen in Shadowrun. It's like, hey, look at this crazy guy with these ridiculous cyber arms.
And that's also where, the playstyle comes in. If you're a bunch of gangers that mainly operates in gangland and occasionally goes downtown for a rampage, that's very different from the kind of security you encounter than if you're a slick criminal that works in boardrooms. Your awareness of security, of how human beings on a corporate level and a corporate security level react is very, very different. And this is often player knowledge. Your character may have a clue about it, but if the player makes his decisions based on player knowledge, it can go really, really wrong. So if you play a concept, a character type that should have knowledge that you as a player don't have, please take some kind of skill that gives you the option to say, hey, my character should have an idea about this.
That's where common sense comes into play.
not only that, but a decker should have, matrix security.
Yeah. That's also going to be covered a little bit under the assumed competence until I'll kind of let you guys know on some of the runs. Be like, yo, this one's going to be a little bit more serious, so let's step up your game a little bit. Um, maybe not to let you know directly, but we'll see how I feel. um, and then there's the Resonance, which is a magical fairyland populated by technomancers and sprites, and they're basically terrorists. Does anybody have any questions, or do you feel like we're ready to discuss what kind of roles people want to play? Because I feel like everybody's kind of wanting to get into that.
Yes.
Yes to questions, or yes to let's get in with it?
Let's get in with it.
I second.
I'm cool with that. Another thing to keep in mind: how often do people enjoy having overlapping roles? How much do people like having a specialist for each role? Or how much do one of the people say, okay, I can help with that. I'm, a backup to this and a backup to that. I don't really have a niche of my own.
Before you answer that, an important thing with Shadowrun I'm going to bring up D&D again. There is no Holy Trinity. In D&D, you kind of need a tank, a DPS, and a healer to get along. In Shadowrun, the Johnson knows the capabilities of the team that he is hiring. So if your team doesn't have a mage or is low on magical stuff, he's not going to hire you to do a job that has high magical security because he wants that job to succeed. So he's not going to hire the wrong tools to perform the job. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Having said that,
but if we have balance, then it gives us more options to solve a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good. It's still good. It's still good to have somebody who can astrally project and have somebody who can handle matrix stuff, because again, gives you more options.
True, but you don't have to be a hardcore specialist in each of those fields. You can be a successful team where you have someone who can do some astral scouting but has no summoning whatsoever, and you can have a successful team where you have someone who knows a lot about the matrix but is not really a hacker. You're someone with a ton of contacts and a good computer skill but no cyber deck. You can go more. You don't have to go all in each category and still be good at your as a team.
On that note, I will have a small example of that before we go into a small break, because we go in for about an hour or so, and then we'll come back and talk about roles and stuff. I played a character on the hub for about almost a year and a half. His name was Omni and Creed. He was a street samurai with a whole bunch of murder people dice and a bunch of different murder flavors, and just a combat dude. But since character generation, he had a cyber deck, which gives this guy who has no in-depth computer skills a huge amount of things that he can do to help a team that are not put bullet into man. Oftentimes, I would give the decker an assist role to get into the host, and then I would sit there and wait. And if that decker ever got a mark on his persona, I would begin erasing it, because that keeps him from having to spend his turns doing it. That keeps him from having to reboot. That helps him out. And I can be like, erase mark. All right, now I'm going to reboot, and I'll clear my Overwatch score. There's a lot of...
Oh, nice. Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy things that you can do with even just something as simple as that. He later on got a rigger command console and a couple of drones, and I continue to say that he was omni-tactical, because he had a tool for everything. And that's kind of like what his concept was. But before I continue to delve too far down into gamer stories that are not relevant, let's go ahead and take like 5, and when we come back, we'll talk about roles, and we'll talk a little bit about Chummer, and we'll talk a little bit about whatever it is you guys want to talk about.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'll see you guys in